Welcome back, everybody. We had what I will call an interesting session last time because we're normally we do these sessions and the code that's provided usually works really well, and if we have simple little problems, we know how to fix them ourselves. But we ran into a problem with the Apple Pie app, ran out of time on top of it all. And I kind of felt like we were kind of getting close to a solution because we were like, Stack Overflowing and, all that kind of stuff. And thinking about all the different ramifications of this. I did just try running the app again, right? So I brought it up in the simulator and I started hitting the buttons. And as you can see here in Xcode, it still is triggering this fatal error, which points to unexpectedly found nil while unwrapping an optional value. And real frankly, I ran out of time to like troubleshoot the problem. I've had like kind of a busy week and then a holiday, and I have crazy teaching schedule, not to make excuses, right? Students are supposed to make excuses, not teachers. But I was proud of one of my students here because he went ahead and troubleshooted it and got it to work and then sent me the solution. And without reviewing the solution now, so I'm being brave and recording this and just kind of putting it out on the internet. And Jonathan, you could use this as something on your resume, by the way. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull up your email in Chrome. And this is basically what you sent to me. And if you don't mind your name appearing on the World Wide Web, there it is, everybody, along with his email address if you want to reach out to him. Now, you say here, after some research and you look through forums and stuff, we're not the only ones. So a recent update to iOS 15 made the changes to how the UI button functions, and you're going to post a screenshot and we can go over what I found. Okay, so tell me what to click on here, and then we'll see if I can fix the code that I have, or if I need to upgrade to Xcode 15, because I am on Xcode 14 something, by the way. And then the book's written around Xcode 13. So we have like basically three different versions we're kind of contending with here. Tell me what to click on first, and I'll kind of do the due diligence here. I'm going to stop the app from running just for starters.
Okay. The screenshot is all one image, so you can just click on that.
And let me
do some zooming in.
Yeah, so maybe a little excessive there, but
so right where your mouse was, the IB action func letter button pressed. So in the book, it has letter string equals sender dot configuration exclamation mark dot title exclamation mark. Or well, you know what? No, I'm looking behind on the book. So it is let letter string equals sender dot title for normal exclamation mark. But that is not how it works now. It is sender dot title label question mark dot text.
So that's what I should type in that spot is that text. All right. So let's see if I can, I'm going to move that to my other screen just temporarily as I type it in. But it is for setting the letter string variable. So sender is still appropriate. And we're going to, here, let's move this to the other line here first. And then I'll append here. Oops. Title label question mark, which denotes an optional, I believe. Dot text. And that's the entirety of the fix?
No, and then we go down to letter, and we're going to add a exclamation mark after letter string.
Okay, so we're doing this little piece. And that's the unwrap thing. All right.
So now that should work.
All right. So if I hit run, you're telling me I will be jumping for joy, right?
Hopefully.
All right. Let's hit the run button. So if it succeeds in the build. right? And the previous build was succeeding too, but it would crash when I would click a button, right?
Hmm.
Now we do know that, like the lady in the video we were just watching, the letter B is there, and oh, check it out, it's appearing. We know the letter T is not. We know E is in there a couple of times, etc. But we're just going to kind of randomly click on letters. But it looks like it's working now, right? Now I better get it right, correct? There we go. But it's not giving us the win-loss at this point, correct?
Hmm.
Right.
Correct.
So now we need to kind of step forward with our instructions. So we're going to say that I'm going to stop the build here from running, that this is the corrected code, right? This was put in here for testing purposes, right? And you know what? This prints to the console. And this is kind of an interesting thing because when we learn how to work with the playgrounds, right, where I was printing to the console, but what happens with the GUI app? Well, the console is still there with the GUI app, and you can use that really to print to log files, for example, or just for messages for the admin to watch as a program is running. So I think we talked about that during the last session, but apparently we're good to go then to kind of roll forward.
Hmm.
And hopefully we don't run into any more situations. So at this point, I think we can move on to the next page. So we're going to move on to part 4 here. So we're going to pick up here.
Now,
Yes, go
sorry,
ahead.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there, but there is one more future fix that we will come across, and I will stop you when we get there.
Sounds like a plan. All right. And thank you, Jonathan, for coming up with that solution. It saved me a little bit of time. And you know what? It speaks volumes about your troubleshooting skills, and you're sticking to a problem and solving it, and I think those are all really important skills in this field for sure. Okay, I'm going to move this back over to the other screen, but we are going to kind of press forward in that section. So I'm going to be kind of reading from the book on page 378. We are on the Xcode 13 version of the Swift Fundamentals book, which is the level 2 book. So I'm just kind of doing that for the video's sake. And we're going to be working on building the code there. And I'm not sure if we maybe added some of this stuff already or not, but I'm thinking not. Okay.
No.
As I'm kind of looking at my stuff. So I'm just going to kind of read at this point. Maybe I'll just bring it over as I read so you guys can see what I'm reading from rather than looking at a boring code screen. It says using word and guessed letters, you can now compute a version of the word that hides the missing letters. For example, if the word for the round is Buccaneer and you guess these certain letters, the player should see the stuff as you type in. So to begin, create a computed property called formatted word within, I think I already did this part, right? So we did this over in the game struct file. So if you're not looking at this view, click on this icon here, which is the project navigator, and we're looking at the game struct. So I did actually add this code, but I'm just going to pull the book over here so we can see that we did it. So we're adding this code here, and basically this is built into the structure. Now, keep in mind, for those of you that know object-oriented programming, a struct is definitely not a class, but it's really, really similar to a class in some ways, right? So it can have properties, and it can have properties, which this is one of them. And we know it's a property basically because it's got like a variable in front of it. And it's kind of like a function. So it's a computed property technically. The code, right? It's going to receive a string. We'll have a variable for a guess word that starts blank. We loop through to see if the letters guessed are contained, right? So they take the letter that we're sending in and we'll see if that's in there. And if it is, then we will append that to it. Otherwise, we're just putting in blanks. So like when you first run it, what happens is you get all blanks, right? Because we haven't guessed any letters. And then as you click on a letter, ideally, if it finds the spot, then it's going to replace that spot with a letter, right? And what it does basically is it traverses the word. So the length of the word is predetermined basically back here. right? So we have it hard, the words are hard coded right here, right? So some words are, 7 letters long, some are 10, some are 5, some are 3, whatever it is. And that will reach into the game struct and create a bunch of underlines for all the words. Now, the other thing that might be kind of interesting here, is like you could change this or make it something different if you want, but I think this is okay, just the way it's laid out. All right, so let's go back to the book then. So let's look at the next page. It says, now that the formatted word is a property that your UI can display, try using it for the text of the current word label inside of update UI. So we are going to update this function. I kind of feel like I did this one too. So let's go check. So like what happened is we were running into errors, but I wanted to keep coding. So, no harm done, really. So let's go to the update UI, which of course is right behind where I'm at. So let's see if I can find a way to show these both at the same time. Maybe like so. That's not too bad. All right, kind of put them side by side here. You can see I typed this in. I'm just double checking my syntax. Now it says build and run your applications. Letter will be added to the guest letters collection as they're selected. And formatted word will be calculated whenever it's accessed in update UI. So I think we're good to this point. We've completed these steps for sure. Now moving on, and it says you may notice a new issue because multiple underscores appear as a solid line in the interface. It can be difficult to tell how many letters are in a word. A solution could be to add spaces during your computation of formatted word, but this issue is purely about improving the interface, not meddling with the computed data. A better solution is to add spaces when you update the text of corrected word label. And so to properly fix that, you can use a Swift method named joined separator that operates on an array of strings. And this function concatenates the collection of strings into one string separated by a given value. And they're giving us an example, right? So you can see that they're, in this case, they have these words, and then basically they're adding a comma space to each one of these, and then that will output like this, right? So the word, comma space, word, comma space, etc. Okay. It says, how can you imagine using this method? Start by converting the array of characters into an array of strings. And use a for loop to sort each of the newly created strings into a string array. And then you can call it this join separator thing to join the new collection together, separated by blank spaces. Let's see if they have an example of how that happens here. And it looks like they do. So I'm going to now pull this over, and then let's get kind of changing this. So we're going to focus our attention here. So I'm going to come inside here, and I'm going to add the following code. So I'll add a var called letters. This is going to be an array of type strings. So it's going to hold strings, and then we're putting the parentheses after it. That's the constructor function for this one. Okay. Then we're going to run a loop, and we're going to say for every letter in the current game in the formatted word, we'll open and close our curly brackets here, and we will do the following. We're going to take the letters and append. Well, actually, we want to append string with the letter, like so. Right, so that's one of the steps. One more thing. Now we're going to put that join separator piece into place. So here is that statement. We're doing a let. We'll call it word with spacing. And that will trigger letters dot joined separator. And then, oh, it didn't finish. Yes, it did. All right. Should have separator inside there. And then what we're going to put in there is just basically space, right? And so the whole point of this is we don't like, we could have, and you know, my brain did go here immediately because I was like, oh, I'll just put a space there, right? Like who cares, right? But then when you replace it, you see the difference, right?
Mhm.
There could be a little bit of a problem. So that's not a good place to put it. This is a little bit more, I would say, an elegant solution for sure. I think the rest of this is okay. Let's go ahead and build and run. That's the recommendation right now. Let's see if we have the spaces. And I'm not seeing it here. Now, I don't know if I'm missing a piece here, but let's click on some letters and see what happens. So I think mine is basically failing at this point, right? So I'm going to have to double check my syntax here. Let's stop the build.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you notice I have a little thing here.
Yeah, I think we need to,
I don't have that.
You
if
don't?
you,
I don't.
Okay, well, thank you for saying that. It makes me feel much better. Um,
can I see what's underneath that?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so we're gonna,
so,
oh
so,
yeah. All right, so there is a change here I didn't make, right? So
yeah, there it is.
this needs to be converted to Word with spacing. There you go.
I have it different. Or no, you have it right. I have, okay, yeah, now we're good. Now we're good.
Okay, now let's give it a run. All right. All right. Oh, there's the spaces. Yay. Right. Well, this helps, right? Because then you know how many letters you have to guess. All right. So that seems to be pretty good, right? So no errors are flying. We see how many letters there are. The spacing actually, I think, makes it a little easier to read, you know, for whatever reason. So I think we're good in that regard. All right. So we're going to move on now. We're on page 380 in the book, moving on to part 5. And so now we're going to start handling tracking the wins and losses. And, you know, there's a couple different issues here, right? So it's not keeping track of things. And guys, I need to take a phone call. So, all right. So we took a little bit of a break there, maybe a little bit more than a little bit of a break. But anyhow, we're back and we're going to press forward here. We are working on part 5 for the apple pie exercise, which is handling the win or loss part. And reading from the book, they're basically saying that, you know, we need to kind of keep track of the incorrect moves remaining piece, right? So that was a thing that we had set up. And then we also need to like keep track of the total wins and total losses, and then keep that updated in the game. So in other words, a person could not only start to play this game, but could continue to play this game, at least until all the words are exhausted. And of course, if you really want to make it interesting, you could dump a huge library of words in there at random of various lengths and actually make it kind of an interesting little game. Not quite Wordle, but you know, not too far off either. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to update the letter button pressed function, which you should see on your screen here. And we're going to make a couple of little adjustments. So I'm assuming this piece isn't going to change, right? Because, you know, the code in the book is obviously different than this. But what we want to do is basically at the very end of this, we want to have basically a new function called update game state. So we're going to, and then call that function from letter button press. So right here, I'm just going to go ahead and create that. And so I'm going to call this func, and we'll say update game state with friends and curlies. And then I'm going to, instead of calling the update UI function, I'm going to call update game state. And then as you might anticipate, the update UI is going to happen inside of there instead. So like we're going to update the wins, losses, how many moves are remaining, you know, or we're going to make the choices based on how many moves are remaining and then update the UI in the aftermath. So down here in the new function that we just created, and I'm going to scroll a little bit here to make a little bit of space. I'm going to start typing in this code here. So basically, we'll start with an if statement, and we're going to say if the current game incorrect moves remaining is equivalent to 0. So that means you're out of moves, right? There's no guesses. There's no apples on the tree, right? Then we're going to take the total losses and we're going to plus equals 1 to that. Then we'll step outside the curlies here, and then we'll add an else if, another set of curlies. And then the logic that we're going to check, and here I am, I'm kind of using like the way I code in Python here a little bit too much. And I did warn you guys, I was coding in Python all morning, so it's a kind of switching modes is a little weird. But
I'm the same way.
Yeah, the current game word, you know, if the current game word is equivalent to the current game formatted word, just so that doesn't scroll to the next line, I'm going to go like this. Then that means that we've guessed the word and it's correct. And instead of incrementing the losses, we're going to increment the wins. And then we'll have an else at the end, right? So if we didn't lose or we didn't win, we're still in progress, then we're going to just update the UI because then it would be appropriate to do so, right? So like we didn't get, I mean, we're updating what appears on the screen. We haven't won or lost yet, but if we didn't win or lose, we are now accommodating for it. And if we win or lose, we don't really need to update the UI at that point because we're done, right? The word's filled in. So that's kind of that step. Now, we want to, at this point, we're getting instructed to build and run. So let's go ahead and hit that run button. I'll get the simulator up on the screen here. And they're asking, is the game functioning properly? And they're saying it's really close, but a new round does not begin after a win or loss. So let's just, you know, test one of the words. We know that, you know, the first word is Buccaneer. So let's see if we can lose.
So just so you know, I am having an error.
All right, we will take a
Yeah.
look.
Okay.
All right, so I lost. Okay, so I did track the loss, but I lost the tree. That's probably not good. And I can't, well, I can keep guessing letters, but I can't, you know, continue really, you know, and the U, I don't know if you caught that, but the U didn't stick, right? All right, so let's stop this from running. And what the book says is whenever total wins or losses changes, a new round can be started. So this is a great time to add a did set property observers to total wins and losses. So we're going to find where we declare the total wins and losses, which is up here at the top. And this is, I find this syntax really kind of interesting here because I don't know if you guys remember doing this in the playgrounds. It seems like a lifetime ago at this point. You know, that you can create a variable with a value, and then you can add this did set property to it, which then you put inside here. And basically what this does is this triggers a piece of code when we successfully reset the variable, right? So this is kind of an interesting kind of approach here. We'll do this both to wins and losses. So if you were strategic here, is what I'm kind of saying. You can grab this code and then just drop it in here as well. I like to have a little space there. So whether you win or you lose, now you can, when that value basically does get set, then did set rings true, we trigger a new round, right? Well, now let's see if that fixes some things. Let's run this. All right. And it doesn't matter if I get it right or wrong, right? But it may as well win for controlling the outcome. All right, great. Now we're on to the next word, and I forget what the next word is, so it makes it kind of more interesting. But what problem are we seeing now?
The buttons aren't resetting.
Yeah, the letter buttons aren't resetting. So let's go ahead and hit the stop button on this. So what we need to do is under the new round function, which we have down here, we need to add a few things here. And I'm looking at how we're going to set this. So it looks like we're going to keep this and this. And then we're going to add some stuff to it, basically. And really what we're going to do is we're going to add an if statement, and we're going to say if not list of words dot is empty, right? So in other words, there's something there. Get our curly brackets, and then we'll grab at least all of these lines here, and we're going to copy them inside that if statement. So as long as we have words to work with, right? Not empty is, so this checks to see if it's empty. We're checking to see if it is not empty, right? Right. So weird syntax, but that is what it is. All right. I'm just checking all the rest of the syntax to make sure that these two lines are correct as indicated, and they look fine. But we're going to add a line of code here, and we're going to say enabled all right, I'm just like firing on all cylinders here. Enable letter buttons. Throw true in there. So that's our new expression here. And otherwise, we're going to have an else on this. And of course, I am calling a function that we don't have yet, or do we have that?
We don't have that one.
You don't have that. We got to add it, right? That was in my recollection there. So otherwise in here, we're going to say enable letter buttons false. Now this is kind of weird because we're putting in the call before we have the thing, right? And I'm more of a fan of creating the function first, so at least when you're typing stuff in, it appears. But it is telling us, hey, we can't find it, right? Now, I don't know if this would offer the fix, by the way. No, it's not to like generate it. So probably not a good idea to do that, but let's go ahead and create another function here then called exactly that. So enable letter buttons. I keep saying enabled, which so.
And when we fill out the body of this function, this is where the other error in the textbook is.
Okay, well, thank you for the heads up, so I don't become a fool here in this YouTube video. And I'm shooting for that YouTube stardom, and it's just not happening yet. But you gotta laugh about it, right? Sure. So we're gonna say for button in letter buttons, and I'm going to type the code as exactly as it appears here, and then we'll figure out how to fix it. And what we're going to say here, button dot is enabled equals enabled. All right, so that's the fix. So now, Jonathan, I'm suspecting that you're telling me that when I hit the run button, we're going to see the error as opposed to, so it's a runtime error as opposed to a syntax error.
Yes.
All right, let's give it a run and see. It says succeeded, right?
Well, maybe it was an error on my end.
Yeah, so we should be able at this point, right? So we know what the right letters and the wrong letters are here, of course. So it may as well, like I said, may as well win at this point. I forget what the second word is. So the letters are refreshing though,
Well,
right?
interesting.
Now, I'm wondering, you were doing this with Xcode 15, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And
So for me to not have an error, I have to have an exclamation mark after letter buttons in that for statement.
okay. So that's an unwrapped thing once again, because if the letter buttons are, potentially empty, that's problematic. So apparently, I'm using Xcode 14 something, I forget the exact version. It's like 14.1 point whatever. You're on Xcode 15. Jomar, you're on Xcode 15 also?
I don't think so. How do I check for that?
Go to X.
All right, so we all managed to clear that hurdle. We had a nice little debug exercise, and we had the problem where one of the students wasn't getting the losses were updating, but the wins weren't. And what had happened is here in the game struct, there was a space here, and that was enough to throw it off, so it would never trip correctly. And removing that was the fix. So that's pretty good that we figured that out. All right, now we are going to move forward. So moving on to page 384. Well, actually, that's the game. I guess that we're on the wrap up page. I'm kind of happy. All right, so it says congratulations. So I guess I'm going to say that we can call this a wrap. We got it to completely work. I think this is a fun little one. I mean, there's a lot of challenges in this one, even though it's kind of a simplistic game. So let's just end the recording here. I think that was, we'll call that a success. So this video ends.